Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Glad to have you all here today. We like to stand and sing our joy song, and the words are up on the wall there.
As our sign out front says, all are welcome. And I'm so glad to see you all here today at Valley Community Church. We have Joe Kinsey here with us with his wife Susan. I'm so glad to see them. Are there any other guests in the congregation today? Or new people? Just good friends. Today we have Chris L. as our special musician. We've had him before and it's wonderful. Melanie Hollis will be our reader. And of course, Dr. Wiggins is going to deliver our message. Melanie, whenever you're ready.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
God is light, and in Him is no darkness at all. The light of God is tangible. It's real, as apparent as the sunlight. We can easily feel the sun's rays when we walk out into the bright sunshine. Why not then just as easily enjoy the warmth and spiritual light emanating from our Creator all about us? When we let that light shine through us, it shines right back to us from everyone else we meet. God's light is omnipresent. It is expanding glow that fills the heart and mind as we recognize the oneness of all creation. This glow of oneness permeates the whole world as we stretch our imagination to encompass the earth and extend to the farthest star and even beyond. We can feel this closeness in the warmth of friendship, the love of our family, the very breath that fills our body temple. No wonder Jesus said, "You are the light of the world." It is a scientific fact. It is a glorious reality. You can bless yourself, everyone you meet, everyone you happen to think about. By the God light shining throughout all creation, just simply say, "I am the light of the world." Thank you, Father.
Now's the time for our first hymn. It's hymn number 6. If you'll stand, and we're going to sing verses 1 and 2. How great they are. Hymn number 6, verse 1 and 2.
I'm going to share with you one of my favorite passages in the Bible. This is from 1 Corinthians 13, and we've heard it many times. If I speak with the eloquence of men and of angels but have no love, I become no more than blaring brass or crashing cymbal. If I have the gift of foretelling the future and hold in my mind not all human knowledge, but the very secrets of God, and if I also have that absolute faith which can move mountains but have no love, I amount to nothing at all. If I dispose of all that I possess, yes, if I give my own body to be burned but have no love, I achieve precisely nothing. This love of which I speak is slow to lose patience. It looks for a way of being constructive. It's not possessive. It's neither anxious to impress, nor does it cherish inflated ideas of its own importance. Love has good manners and does not pursue selfish advantage. It is not touchy. It does not keep account of evil or gloat over the wickedness of other people. On the contrary, it shares the joy of those who live by the truth. Love knows no limit to its endurance, no end to its trust, no fading of its hope. It can outlast anything. Love never fails. In this life we have three lasting qualities: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of them is love. Paul said it so eloquently, and Jesus said it equally eloquently. And yet living it is not the easiest thing in the world. Loving God and thanking Him is one thing. There's so much to be thankful for in life. We can look around and see blessings in every sector of our lives. All we have to do is look. But carrying that same feeling, that same attitude, that same interaction with other people, whether we know them or don't know them, is trickier. It's harder. And it's a great deal harder if there is something negative, some annoyance or frustration or a sense of being abandoned or forgotten or neglected in some manner, shape, or form with that other person. If they make it very clear that they don't love you. But, you know, David Hawkins, that's the name of the man whose book we're studying right now, just a wonderful book, terrific book. David Hawkins said this: you need to remember the intrinsic innocence of people, that they don't know any better, or that they couldn't have done it any differently, or they would have. So what we're struggling with constantly is people's ignorance of the truth of themselves, the truth of life, that if you can bring love, or if you want to put it in other terms, if you can look for the good, discover the good in every person, every interaction in life, if you can do that, you are making your own life blessed. You are making yourself healthier and happier, more productive, more creative. You've got the whole ball of wax when you love. Well, along with so many multi-millions of people who have read this passage, we give thanks to Paul, who did not have an easy life at all. By choice, he carried the torch of Jesus Christ, and it cost him dearly. It cost him his life. But what a gift he has given us in many, many wonderful things he said. But this, from my money, takes the cake. It's the best. Now, thing is, we have to remember it. We have to put it in our heads, put it into our intentions for the day when we wake up in the morning, or maybe before we go to sleep at night. Love. Love. In this life we have three lasting qualities: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest is love. Shall we say our divine science statement of being? You'll find it in your orders of service if you need. God is all, both invisible and visible. One presence, one mind, one power is all. This one that is all is perfect life, perfect love, and perfect substance. I am the individualized expression of God, and am ever one with this perfect life, perfect love, and perfect substance.
Check it, make sure we're good. I think it was in front of the AC over there, so it got a little chilly. So this piece I'll be playing today is Components del Lava, and it is it was written by Eduardo Sanz Valamaza. It has a repeated note. Quite a bit. So, Components del Lava, it means the bells of morning.
This is the time in our service when we don't receive prayer prayer slips. Okay, thank you.
Give the box.
Thank you. Very important. Isn't life busy? And it's an important thing, though, to deliberately set aside a time when we're not busy, when we quiet ourselves and go within, as we do right now. Just check out the whole body and make sure everything is relaxed. Shoulders and faces and arms and hands and back, stomach, legs and feet. Relaxed. So that we can move the mind away from just the physical, even when we're sometimes in pain. Getting still can quiet that. And using those moments of inner peace to remember who and what we are, where we are, and what we are about. Who are we? Our divine science statement of being says it so eloquently. Individualized expressions of God. Individualized meaning never separated, part of, instantly, constantly connected to the omnipresence of God. That's what. And where? Where we are is physically, mentally, right here, right now. But if we take the longer view, if we look at life not just from the here and now, but of our eternal identity. We are in the midst of God's universe, about the business of being in perfect harmony with that infinite spirit, which is the essence, the perfection of love expressed. Oh, beloved Father, Mother, friend, we give such deep thanks for these moments together, and they can be taken when you're in the bathroom, or you're brushing your teeth, or you're having that last sip of coffee, or you're driving down the road, just to remember that you are inseparably connected, one with, and if you will, a conduit, a way for God's love to express itself in the world, any place, any time. That's the who, what, where, why. Well, it isn't quite the why, but the why is perhaps the most important thing of all. To give us a reason for doing this, for living lovingly. And that is because it is not only the happiest, the freest, the most uplifting and healthiest way to exist. It is fulfilling a divine destiny that is ours. Love. As we realize this today, we send our profound love, our empathy, our concern, our blessings to all the people who have been involved in the awful massacres that have taken place over the last week or so in our country. And sadly, terrifyingly, really, we give thanks for God's presence in the mind, in the consciousness, and in the actions of anyone who contemplates this now, contemplates hurting others, hurting many others. We know God with them, each and every one. God subtly changing their viewpoint, their mind. Something healing and uplifting coming into their consciousness and making that thought or that intention of harming others and also harming themselves, making it a thing of the past, no longer important. This we know for our own country, the whole country, and for every other country on this globe, for every other person. In the 90 seconds of silence that we are going to have right now, a time of peace and quiet for you, physically. Allow that thought, that blessing, that love to stream out to those you love first, those you know, those who are strangers, those who suffer and grieve this day, those whose intentions are being gently shifted away from self or destruction of others. Let us see, know, feel, give thanks that God is omnipresent right there, healing, transforming these situations. Let us do that right now. Come unto me, all ye who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Indeed, to know the presence of God, the love of God, the help of God at any time and in any place gives us a sense of assurance, peace, rest. And we know these truths for all those today who carry that crushing burden of sorrow and loss, as well as to those who might hold in mind such acts, such destructive, self-destructive, humanly destructive acts. God reigns, and we know He is right there, right now, as well as right here, right now. And for all this and so much more, we give deepest thanks. Amen. Now shall we say the Lord's Prayer, the affirmative tense. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed is thy name. Thy kingdom is come, thy will is done on earth as it is in heaven. Thou givest us this day our daily bread. Thou forgivest us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Thou leadest us not into temptation, but dost deliver us from all evil. For thou art the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen. Well, this morning I'm going to be talking about look again. Well, right now, I'm going to ask you to use your imagination. I'd like to imagine that as you walk through the doors this morning, we handed you, every one of you, 3 different pairs of glasses. And from time to time, I'm going to ask you to look again through these imaginary glasses or mindset at certain things I'm going to be talking about. Now, on donning the first pair, as they go over your ears, I'm going to ask you to view things as though you lived back in Old Testament times. Now, the second pair of imaginary glasses are going to bring you back to present time. And this time you're going to see how, with the help of modern science, we would look at exactly the same thing, but from today's viewpoint. Our scientific and rational and sometimes critical opinion about things. Critical way of looking at things. But then this third pair of make-believe glasses is going to help us, once again, to look again at the same thing exactly, but this time seeing it through the viewpoint of your own deepest spiritual point of view. Okay? Okay. Now, in a few moments, I'm going to read from some verses from the story of creation, that is from the book of Genesis. And this is going to be some information that I got out of one of Dr. Rocco Errico's books. And he, of course, is an expert in Aramaic and in Hebrew. But first of all, he points out very clearly that it was assumed by all the Semitic peoples, it didn't matter where in the Middle East they happened to live, that there was a ruling deity. You didn't have to worry about if God existed, a greater power existed. Everybody believed that. There was this either ruling deity or deities, because sometimes there were male and female gods in certain sectors of certain regions of the Middle East. And these gods, or God, brought everything into being, everything that existed. Now, there were, throughout Old Testament times, a great many creation stories in the religions of the Middle East. But the Hebrew story is surprisingly similar to the one that the Babylonians taught. And it's kind of natural. It might have been the influence of the Babylonians, because they were in exile in Babylon for 3 generations, something like that. But they had one major exception between these two belief systems. The Babylonians had all-powerful male and female gods. The Hebrews, on the other hand, had only one God, who possessed all powers, both male, so-called, and female, so-called. But then you wonder, why in the world did they picture Elohim? And that's what he's called in the first chapter of Genesis, Elohim. Why did they picture him like an oriental potentate with his messengers going out, the angels, or maybe the heavenly courts that some passages in the Bible talk about? And why did they have a God, a ruler, who periodically got angry and critical and punished people? Why did they picture him that way? Well, it occurred to me that maybe that was the only kind of ruler that any of them had ever seen or heard about. Power is in the hands of a person, and his disposition might have influenced greatly what he or she did, very few she's. But it was posited in one person only. And it could be good or bad. And usually it meant that these people were under the thumb of the ruler, and they had to jump as high as they were told to. So it seems to me that they depicted this all-powerful spirit that had these human characteristics because that was their unconscious expectation. They'd never heard or been told about, nobody knew about a ruler that was all beneficent, all loving. And so, of course, this is conjecture, but it seems to me that logically that must have influenced in some way. Dr. Errico reminds us that when these words were written down, there were very, very few people who could read or write. The creation story was written for the scribes and the learned men, who would in turn then read them aloud to a group of people. So they were written in a very beautiful, poetic way. There's a lovely rhythm, a kind of repetition and cadence to these verses from Genesis. Very moving, very memorable, and certainly designed to touch and to feed a spiritually hungry people. Now, you're going to put on your glasses and listen to these words from Genesis as though you were one of these uneducated people, and these were precious truths that were coming in right out of the mouth of a rabbi, a learned man. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was chaos, and darkness was upon the deep, and the Spirit of God hovered compassionately over the surface of the waters. This is Dr. Errico's translation of the Aramaic. Then God exclaimed, "Let there be light." And there was light. Now God saw the light that it was beautiful. So God separated the light from the darkness. Then God named the light day, and he named the darkness night. Now it was evening, then it was morning, day one. And God exclaimed, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." So God made the firmament and separated the waters that were under the firmament from the waters that were above the firmament. And that is how it happened. Then God named the firmament sky. Now it was evening, then it was morning, day two. Then God exclaimed, "Let the waters that are under the sky come together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And that is how it happened. Then God named the dry land earth. He named the collection of waters seas. Now God saw that it was beautiful. Then God exclaimed, "Let the earth sprout vegetation, the herb yielding seed according to its nature, and the fruit tree that bears fruit that is implanted in itself according to its nature upon the earth." And that is how it happened. So the earth sprouted vegetation, the herb yielding seed according to its nature, and the fruit tree that bears fruit that is implanted in itself according to its nature. And God saw that it was beautiful. Now it was evening, then it was morning, day three. Then God exclaimed, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the sky, and separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days, and for years. And let them shine in the firmament of the sky to give light on the earth." And that is how it happened. So God made two great lights, the larger light to rule over the day, and the smaller light to rule over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was beautiful. Now it was evening, then it was morning, day four. Time doesn't permit me to read it all, so I will condense the rest of it. Then God created living creatures in the waters and flying creatures in the sky, then living creatures, animals, reptiles, wild land beasts, and finally, humankind. Humankind made in his image, and Dr. Erico translates as our resemblance. And God decreed humankind would rule. He would rule, and she would rule over all the other living creatures and the vegetation. And then God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase and fill the earth and master it and rule over all." Then God observed everything that he had made, and behold, it was exceedingly beautiful. And on the seventh day, he rested. The creation story is beautifully told. It's so poetic, it's moving, it has such a rhythm. That repetition makes it somehow wonderful. But as we put on our second pair of glasses, and that's the time to do that, it is anything but scientifically accurate. Even if you said that God's exclamation was actually the Big Bang 15 billion years ago, and you allowed that the days that were spoken of in Genesis weren't 24-hour days, but epochs, there still are major problems when we compare the creation story with the geologic and anthropological records. My goodness, what a change, what a difference. More than 13 billion years ago, galaxies and the first stars coalesced from the primordial gases that were produced soon after the Big Bang, 13 billion years ago. Many stars, many planets, including our sun and its planets, were created when a nearby star went supernova, blew up. That just happened 4.5 billion years ago. Well, gradually the Earth solidified, cooled down enough so that the first microorganisms began to appear about 3.8 billion years ago. And it took over 1 billion years for the Earth's landmass actually to appear. Marine plants like phytoplankton and some land plants like moss and algae, they came about 700 million years ago. Not billions, only 700 million years ago. There was an explosion of sea and land animals about 500 million years ago. Dinosaurs roamed the earth at the time. About 65 million years ago, they were all wiped out, or pretty much all wiped out. When an enormous meteor hit the earth, it caused such a huge dust cloud that hung over the earth for several years, that in fact wiped out all the vegetation. Most of the dinosaurs starved to death. Today's birds actually are descendants of the dinosaurs that didn't die. Large mammals appeared in the fossil record soon after the extinction of the dinosaurs, 65 million years ago. Homo sapiens has come on the scene relatively recently, a mere 200 to 300,000 years ago. Cave paintings became common about 12,000 years ago. Civilizations sprang up just a mere 6,000 years ago. But it's very clear you cannot take the creation story from Genesis, from the first chapter of Genesis, literally. It's so clear that science is saying things that are quite different than what you hear in the Old Testament. But when you put on that third set of glasses and you look again, you can see, perhaps from the point of view, that you truly have an identity that is infinitely more than just your physical appearance or anything you have ever actually said or done in this world. In Genesis 1:26, the voice of God takes on a completely different tone than it had previously. Instead of, "Let there be," it changes. There's another tone. "Let us make." Let us make. Now, this is such a clear indication of God's intimate involvement in the most unique and valued of his creations. You. That which he identified as his image, his resemblance. You. That which has always been and will always be his child. You. Among all God's other creations, there were none who resembled him or who were designed to communicate with him, to know Elohim, God, intimately, other than you, his children. As we look again at how we were identified in Genesis 1:26, we also see clearly that there was one transcendental source for everything, for the whole human family. It mattered not what their belief system happened to be. No one is superior, says this great statement. No one is superior to anybody else in God's eyes. We are to live in harmony with one another, always striving to accept within us and express the awesome heritage of God's own nature. And as His children, not only are we to live in harmony with our neighbors, that's everybody else, but we are enjoined to live in harmony with ourselves, with respect and gratitude to ourselves. Do we ever do this? No. And it's so important to never take ourselves for granted, but that we applaud and give thanks to ourselves. We have to pat ourselves mentally on the back for making a hard but right decision, for speaking the truth and acting with integrity always. Always doing unto others what we would want others to do to us. Always. Consistently seeking to express God's most central quality, love. We have to give ourselves credit for that, because most of the time nobody else knows it. Nobody else realizes it. Nobody else knows the effort. We must give ourselves credit. Not taking ourselves for granted, because God never does. He never takes us for granted. Even if never before, from now on, look again and see yourself, identify yourself, realize that you are a channel of God's own nature, and give thanks for it. Let's go within. And once again, give thanks. Knowing that we are so infinitely privileged to have been created with these profound qualities, the strength of which we have never fully tested or even partially tested. But those qualities exist within us as a gift from God, His image. For that truth, remembered and lived, celebrated, shared. Oh, beloved Father, we do give the deepest thanks. Amen.
I just thought it worked out. It's by Andrew York. He's a Virginia composer. This piece was written probably in the 1980s, so it hasn't been around too long. I pulled the sleeves up for this one.
Now is the time for our blessings of the gifts. And right afterwards, we're going to, Dr. Wiggins is going to make an announcement for us. If you would follow me in the orders of service and recite with me. Today, I acknowledge God, omnipresent, as the source of all good, as the source of my good. With this acknowledgement, I accept His will, which is abundance in every aspect of my life. I release all thoughts of lack and limitation, and I am open and receptive to the increased flow of abundance to me right now. I joyfully accept the gifts of life and give freely of the special gift that I am. Through me, God omnipresent, blesses and multiplies this gift for all. Thank you, God.
Thank you.
Please help yourself to a name or two. Remember them in prayer because they wouldn't be in here unless something very untoward has happened in someone's life. So I invite you to help them and help yourself by praying for someone or several someones this week. Thank you. Today, I have the great pleasure of dedicating this beautiful plaque that is going to be on permanent display at the back of our sanctuary here from now on. It memorializes a person who is a loving and dedicated member of Valley Community Church for 35 years. That is Brenda Kinsey. And it also is a symbol of our deepest gratitude to her husband Joe and his lovely wife Susan for the really amazingly generous gift that they have given to our church in memory of Brenda. Brenda was a wonderful example of somebody who wisely used her native talents, which were many. In addition to which, there was a great faith in God in this woman, and that enabled her to achieve some very impressive goals, really. She left a good-paying job, and banking on having been a successful student in high school, she applied and was admitted to Hollins as a mature adult rather than an 18-year-old. She graduated with a BA from Hollins, and then she earned a master's degree in science at Radford. Her skills in counseling and social work first were given at TAP and later with the city of Roanoke. And this enabled her to help a great many different people. Brenda and Joe loved to travel, and they enjoyed some wonderful trips together. She took a special pleasure in flower gardening and decorated several homes with wonderful taste. When she was first diagnosed with cancer, her response was to turn to God after the awful shock of hearing such news. But with that complete faith and her consistent prayers and affirmations, she recovered completely and she was cancer-free for 10 years. Unfortunately, it returned at that time, and she was not able to overcome that dreadful disease. She was, though, able to end her days in the way she always wished, and that was in the home she loved, gently and lovingly cared for by Joe, and who was always nearby, and aided by skilled hospice workers. So today we celebrate her memory and hold in our hearts Brenda Kinsey. We certainly honor her for all the help and the blessings she provided so many people, and for the beauty she created around her, for her friendships and her kindness to her friends and to everybody here at Valley Community Church. We remember her especially for her example of being a person who lived a life of integrity, of excellence, of service, and of love to all the people around her. So, Joe and Susan, you have our deepest thanks once more for your amazingly generous gift in Brenda's memory. And that is all that made this day possible, and her, not physical presence, but her memory will be honored from now on here with this lovely plaque. Thank you. Now, for those of you who don't know Joe and Susan, would you stand up and let's all just.
I would just like to say, appreciate all the church did for Brenda, especially when it's real.
It was our great pleasure and love.
Yeah, good. She really appreciated it.
We appreciate
We
it.
did too.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm going to make these announcements short. The flowers today are dedicated to Joe and Susan, so please take them all with you. And thank you all again so much, Joe and Susan. Thank you. Board meeting is tomorrow, 4 o'clock in the annex, so everybody's welcome, so please come to that. Also Thursday night, craft class with Ann at 6:30. And everybody please join us next door for potluck. Everybody is welcome, visitors and all, so please feel free to come. Also, lastly, just wanted to say, I know I've said this before, but everybody in here is going through a struggle of some kind. And so, just be kind to people, okay?
I do have a couple of other things if I may.
Okay, sure,
I'll make a brief.
sure.
I'm going to be teaching a class in the Old Testament starting the second Monday in September. And whoever is interested, there's a sign-up sheet here. You might want to take it for credit, or you might want to audit it. But it is here for anyone who might be interested. And we thank you for signing up so we can get the classes and lessons here in time for everybody to have the set. And finally, I'm going to be speaking again at the end of the month. And, there isn't just one creation story. There are two creation stories. That's the second chapter of Genesis. Equally interesting, and I'm going to be talking about that at the end of the month. So, thank you.
Our closing hymn is on the board or the wall. Please stand and help me sing it.
final blessing.
Okay.
I'm going up the rear.
Okay. We're hand in hand. We're affirming together that our thoughts, our love, our concern go out to those people who have been so devastatingly impacted by the events of the last 10 days or so. To those further back in time, but no less injured by the acts, the destructive acts of some people. So today we surround those possible perpetrators, those perpetrators from the past, and know that within each and all of them, despite the terrible choices they made, their soul is indeed the image and likeness of God. The possibility, the opportunity, the availability of God's help and His love, of seeing the world anew through different eyes, is always available. And change. Blessed change for those who hold darkness in their hearts is also available. To God, our Creator, our friend, our companion, our beloved, we give thanks for this and everything else. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.